Hello and welcome to the Against the Fence podcast with your host Breezy. Today we are back to doing the interview style, which I really enjoy. And today I think we've got a fantastic guest, Leo Cooper MMA. How are you doing, buddy?
Very well, very well. As I said before, we just punched record. Having a pretty relaxed Friday, so enjoying myself, enjoying my time, and yeah, just gonna focus on some admin stuff today. No heavy lifting, no long editing hours, thankfully. So yeah, I'm feeling good, feeling good.
I've got a whole host of questions prepped, so I'll just dive into them and then we'll see where we end up. With your YouTube channel, one thing that's always kind of made me think, and one thing I want to understand is growing up, what was it that first sparked your interest in creativity and kind of storytelling?
Ooh.
And how did those early experiences shape the person that you've become today?
Damn, that's a heavy question to kick off with. I like it. I'd say probably. I always say, even now, even just talking candidly, my sort of first two loves creatively. The second is MMA, or in terms of creating MMA content. But first is video games, and I do that as a sort of side project on my YouTube channel. But I say back when I was a kid, that's probably what first ignited that spark. Playing, games back on like original Xbox, PS2. That was just when I was like 4 years old. I don't remember a time where I wasn't playing games, and I just always loved the creative side of that. And obviously, that was originally the career path I was going to go down to at university before I changed gears and started doing YouTube. But I think from that innately, playing games and just being fascinated with creativity and the artistic side of it, of video games specifically. And I think that just MMA was something I found a lot later in life, probably when I think I was like 18. So and there really are two different worlds, at least at a sort of surface level. They couldn't really be further apart. But I sort of was able to marry them together. I think when I realized I'd always had maybe a bit of passion towards YouTube and creating content, I'd always considered doing it, but never bitten the bullet. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try this. I don't want to do it about video games because, that's my first love. I want to try it with something else. And I'll sort of marry those two ideas together. And it worked pretty well. And here we are, 2 and a bit years down the line of YouTube. And it's not going so bad, so I can't complain. But yeah, I'd say from video games initially, as a kid, 100%.
Yeah, that is something that interests me, video games, and kind of understanding that connection between kind of gaming and storytelling, you can see comes through well with your work.
Oh, thank
Obviously,
you.
for you, that creative spark translated into you choosing to study a gaming development degree. That's right?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you see any early connections between the world of gaming and the storytelling aspects of MMA and content creation? Like, how did that transpire for you?
I mean, I couldn't say specifically, but I think I was much more drawn to story-driven games. I've always preferred single-player experiences and stuff like that, and I love getting engrossed in a narrative and almost the theatrical side of it to an extent. And I feel like I take an element out of that and put it into my content, because within my script writing, which is for me the bread and butter, it's the meat on the bone, it's the focus on every video for me. I try and be as theatrical as possible, and that's with intention. Some people don't like it, but I do it, full intention. I try to make a story feel grand and dress up this world of MMA from a sort of, I think what the sort of misconception towards MMA, of course, is that it's a barbaric blood sport, and I feel like I try and dress it up to be something bigger than that and more distinguished, which I think that's representative of where MMA is going as a whole. But I think with YouTube and what I do, I try and do the very same as well.
What was it? Obviously, I don't know much about game development. What was it kind of in that, do you think? What are the key things that you took away from that degree that help you do your day-to-day as such?
Well, it's quite useful actually, because within my degree, it was more of it wasn't a very specific thing. So I wasn't just doing 3D art. I wasn't just doing a bit of programming or animation. I was doing everything. And there was so much multitasking and being able to keep on top of different elements as an individual, because there was no group projects. It was completely solo. And obviously that translates massively to YouTube, having a lot of various baskets full of eggs, or whatever the phrase is. That's not the one, but you get what I'm saying. Just managing and micromanaging a lot of different areas. So whether that's script writing, editing, graphic design with thumbnails, which definitely helped, and everything in between, audio. Again, a lot of these things I had to learn from scratch, of course, but how I approached tackling them from a sort of strategic point of view and structurally, I found a lot easier because I did that work on the degree, for sure.
The Witcher 3 isn't just one of the greatest RPGs ever made.
Okay.
It's a world people lose themselves in. Between the morally complex choices, sprawling open world, and some of the best side quests in gaming history, it set a new bar, particularly for me, for storytelling. Looking back, what's one quest or moment that really cemented itself as an all-time
what a
great
question. You really have done your research, eh? Yeah, I mean, I love that game. If we're talking about storytelling and passion and how I translated that into MMA, I don't think you can really look further than The Witcher 3. Obviously, I'm not creating a new story. I'm telling someone else's, but I feel like some of the elements translate over. And it's a good sort of timing you say that, because I finally got my brother to play it for the first time, and then watching him play through it was just a privilege. And, oh, man, it's a tough one. You put me on the spot because there's so many good moments. I love the Last Wish quest, which ties into the book, because I have a sort of new appreciation for that because I started reading the books now. So there's a sort of natural tie in there. But also, honestly, anything in the Blood and Wine expansion is just so good. Particularly sort of the climax near the end. I love it all. Honestly, I wish I could give you a more in-depth answer. Obviously, the Bloody Baron quest as well. I feel like that's the one everybody knows. That's probably the best written one, because it sort of encapsulates how morally grey the world of The Witcher is. I think that's sort of a microcosm. It represents the larger world to a T. And yeah, I love that. I love all of it. It's the best written game I think ever made, for sure.
Yeah, I've got to agree. And CD Projekt Red, I think, have got a really good history of kind of producing games. I know Cyberpunk kind of fell on its face at the start, but I was fortunate enough to have a PC that was good enough to run it. So
Likewise.
I got the full experience, and it was. I mean, it's another one which I think is absolutely great.
Yeah, it was buggy. It was buggy as hell, but it was playable at the start, and it's a lot better now. Of course, I love it. I think there's a lot of criticism with Cyberpunk because people don't like the first person perspective. I disagree. I think that is what makes the game. I don't think Cyberpunk is anywhere near as good if you take it into a third person perspective. And obviously I get that it's tailor made to fit the first person view, but I think it's the best option they pick, because the main crux of not just Cyberpunk but The Witcher and all of really CDPR's games is it's the characters, it's the focus on the stories. And I feel like Cyberpunk is even more prevalent in the sense that the main focus is on a probably like a dozen characters really set in a massive sprawling world that wants to sort of swallow them whole. And having a first person point of view, it really just enhances that intimacy, with every quest, every character that you meet. And I loved it. I loved it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. How many times have you played through The Witcher? I'm guessing a few.
Yeah, Witcher 3, I think I played through 3 times. 3 times in The Witcher 3, and Cyberpunk, I think 3 as well. Yeah.
How many times did it take you to get to that scene with Yennefer and Gwen in the same run? Did you manage to do it?
Which one?
When you kind of get to that scene as such with Yennefer and then the redhead girl. I forgot her name.
Oh, Triss, yeah.
Triss.
No, I never did it. Never did it.
I'm just
a man of principle.
I'm an immature young boy then.
Man of principle.
Many people know Gwent as just a card game, but for those that have really gotten into it, it's a battle of strategy, timing, and mind games. For you, what's the most thrilling moment or strategy in Gwent that makes it more than just a game?
It's interesting because I never really got into the Gwent in The Witcher 3. I just sort of used passing mini game. I kind of ignored it. And then when they announced the closed beta for a standalone in 2016 or something like that, I was like, yeah, I'll sign up. And then I did not realize at the time I'd be dooming my life away for probably over 1,000 hours of playing it over and over and over again. And I kind of forgot what your question is because I'm so obsessed with that game. I just immediately, my mind got taken over.
What's the most thrilling moment of strategy that makes it more than just a game?
I think it's just the versatility of deck building. I think that's what makes any good card game, really, whether that's a physical one or a digital one. It's the variety and variety in strategy and making your own rules. And obviously, there's a lot of people make popular decks, and there are metas like in any competitive multiplayer game. But there's always room with Gwent to sort of flex your own, I guess you could say, creative muscles in a lot of ways, because there is uniqueness to it. You can build your own decks, and there's a lot of viable strategies too. And also economically, it's a free to play game, but it's very free to play friendly, which in today's modern age of gaming is few and far between. So I greatly appreciate that sort of financial strategy from CDPR. They don't you know, fought up roadblocks for people who aren't willing to pay. And, you know, there's a lot of that. I mean, that's only a good thing for the consumer. And yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours and hours about Gwent. I'm glad you picked that up because it's not enough people have played it. And it's a shame that it doesn't get the support officially anymore. But there's still a very good cult following, myself very much included there.
Yeah, I dabbled in it when they did do the standalone, and yeah, I enjoy it. I've always been kind of into card games growing up. I mean, Pokemon's a big one, but as a card game, it's quite good. The one I really got into growing up was Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Yu-Gi-Oh! Was like my thing. So when Gwent came out, I was like, well, I love The Witcher, and they've now released a card game, so I've got to give it a go, right?
Yeah, basically the same for me. Literally simple.
Yeah. Yeah, on this journey of like kind of trying to find stuff out about you, this is someone that I'd never heard of, but Quedeca's music isn't just something you listen to.
Man,
it's
how do you do this?
It's something that I would say you experience, because I kind of went into it, and I think for me it was kind of the hyper lyrical rap days to the haunting kind of atmospheric sound of I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, and he's kind of reinvented himself along the way. As a big fan, what's kind of one creative risk that he's taken that resonates with you? And can you draw any parallels between his creative evolution and your own?
Oh, for sure. That is such a good question. I mean, it's good that you say that because I've got the 2 albums there in the back, his 2 most recent pieces of work. And, you know, he's a guy that I think he's best known for anyone listening. He did a diss track on KSI back when that was a popular thing. And that sort of blew him up. And then obviously I never really paid much attention to him after that. I just knew him for that. And he was just known as that sort of cringy YouTube rapper. But then I think in my last year of uni, actually, it times quite well because it was really when I started doing YouTube as well. So I started flexing my creative muscles. I discovered that he basically put out a new album, which was making waves in sort of underground scene, and a lot of good positive talk about it. And I listened to it and I just completely got sucked into this sort of creepy concept album, which I don't really know how to describe even now. And I sort of became obsessed. And it's an interesting, you know, question you say about drawing parallels. I can 100% see that because I think the reason for his success so much in terms of artistically, maybe not from a financial perspective, because the music doesn't appeal to a wider audience. But I think the reason he's had that critical success is because he's been willing to innovate, willing to change, and put in the hours to I just innovate, as I said. And I think I definitely try and do the same with YouTube. I always like to think that my newest video 9 times out of 10 is always my best work, and that's why I still have my old stuff up there. I've debated archiving it and deleting it. Maybe I will one day, I'm not sure. But if you go back and look at those videos, some people might disagree, but I think the overwhelming majority would say, myself very much included, that they are terrible, absolutely awful, especially in comparison to the stuff I make now. And I don't see that as a knock. I see that as a very positive thing because it means I am improving, I'm putting in the hours, and I'm leveling up each time. And as I said, I'm working on that new Alexander Volkanovski documentary. And in my opinion, it's the best piece of work I've ever made by a mile. So I know I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm innovating. And I like to think that Quedeca probably does the same. And I know he's releasing a new album. So the jury's still out on that. Maybe it won't be as good, but I hope it is. And I think it will be. But yeah, that's a good question. I'm very passionate about his music. And if anyone hasn't listened to that one on the left, the green one, is a very, very good album. Very. My favorite, probably.
Obviously, because Quedeca is quite niche. For those who don't know him, how would you, as a big fan, kind of describe him to the masses?
Artistically, like as a musician?
Yeah.
Oof, I mean, I almost feel like it's impossible to do so because I feel like his music doesn't really fit into any hole. You know, it doesn't conform to conventionality, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. Because in creative industries, whether that's music or YouTube, I feel like it is so hard to be original, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be original in this game to do well or to create something great. But I think it's special when you find something that is, and it's actually very good. And his albums are very much that. I think, again, I can't speak on the music technical side of things. I did study it for a bit in school, but not to the level of a professional artist. So I couldn't tell you on a technical level. But I think if you just listen to these more recent works, his last 2 projects, you'll see exactly what I mean. It doesn't conform to conventional rules of music, in my opinion.
Because the other thing to note about him as well, which what has kind of surprised me, I was listening to him on YouTube, and I was watching the music videos, and he produces everything himself. It's all done by him, isn't it? And when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's like YouTube, is it not? It's the same thing. I mean, to an extent, obviously, I know as people grow and they get bigger, they start to hire people, and there is a double-edged sword to that, in that some of the creative agency is stripped away, the creative vision. It's not as good as it could be because there are multiple people working on the same project. That's just innately how it goes. And obviously, the good side of that is you save time and effort. There's drawbacks to each approach, but I think there is a certain privilege and something to be said about producing something or creating something entirely by yourself, because it's an uncompromised vision. It's entirely yours. I'm always so proud whenever I write my script and I always visualize the final product in my head even before I've even started editing it. And I think there's something to be said about envisioning that and it coming to life to a T exactly how you want it to. And I think that's what comes with doing something yourself.
I love that. Chelsea's identity has shifted over the years from the defensive resilience that most people know of the Mourinho era to the fluid attacking football we've seen in flashes under, well, quite a few different managers now. Tactically speaking, what do you think has been the club's most effective style of play? And do you see a clear footballing philosophy emerging under the current setup?
Ooh. To the latter question, absolutely not. I don't know. Maybe not absolutely. I'm holding that hope because I'm an optimist when it comes to football. I'm hoping things turn around. In terms of, I think, the best we ever looked, obviously, I'm grateful that I grew up in a time where I haven't really seen Chelsea be how they used to be. I've always seen them generally floating around the top, and obviously to varying degrees. But I think the best we've ever been, probably in my eyes, from what I can remember, under Conte in 2017 when we won the title. I think that's my strongest memory of football and my best time, I think, watching football, because we were just running down teams, attacking, and it really the formation we were playing in, a 3 at the back formation, it just completely blew the league wide open. Then a lot of other managers started doing it, and obviously that success wasn't replicated, and it was sort of like a lightning in a bottle season. But yeah, it was unbelievable. I loved it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm also a Chelsea fan, so
my man.
I think one of the big things for me, I was massive over like the Sarri kind of era. I was a big fan of Sarri.
I went to quite a few games that season, but I don't know. We were good at the start, and then it just things change.
The big thing was the European competition. I think that's a big thing. Hazard's last game and the kind of European Cup was one of my favorite performances from them both.
I was actually at the semi-final, the penalty shootout.
Oh, you were there?
That was Hazard's last home game. So I know you're referring to the final, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the. I haven't been to many games in a while because obviously I went to university and priorities changed. But back then I went to quite a few, and that was one of them. So I had the privilege of saying I was at Hazard's last game at Stamford Bridge, and of course he scored the winning penalty. And yeah, that's a special moment for me.
Yeah, I'll a little golden nugget in this. That one I didn't actually research. That one was, I was speaking to you a week ago, and I was incredibly envious because I've seen a Hazard shirt framed.
Oh yeah, and I could probably turn the camera for you, couldn't it? So over there, there's a couple of them over there.
Yeah, I was like, that is wow, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I've had that for a while actually.
Yeah, I was like, I've got to ask him about that.
Good eye.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it is. I think there's something to be said about that. Like, even from a creative point of view, I think being attentive, being able to, I spend so much time researching, and I know it's not exactly the same, but actually, no, it is. What am I talking about? Of course it is. But again, it comes back to what I said about being original. It's difficult to be original, and there's nothing wrong with not having an original idea. So doing research and being able to take inspiration from other people, or in this context, finding something to ask me a question about, I think there's only a positive thing to say about that. Really, there's never a bad thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the reason why I enjoy this kind of style of podcast myself, and why I wanted to explore it, was my idea for this is to have guests on that I want to speak to, but it's not really about it like conforming massively with kind of mainstream stuff. It's more about if someone is a fan of you, if they watch this, they go, oh shit, I didn't know any of this. And it opens them up to the person that they've come to watch. Yeah. Rather than kind of like I like the MMA talk, but I can't, there's only so much of it I can listen to because it's like,
no, you're right. We say the same thing on our podcast. As much as we love MMA, it is our life 24/7. It's the same way I don't really watch MMA YouTubers at all, really. because I'm so involved in the world of MMA. It's the last thing I want to do in my downtime is watch more MMA content. I want to spend that time doing something else. So I completely get you. It's more interesting to talk about, whether it's the personal side, anything that's not MMA. That's the intriguing part of the content side. And I think it's the same thing about fighters. It's the same thing what viewers want to see. It's not the fight prep and camp side of things. It's what these people are doing day to day. And I know we briefly touched on that the other week, I think. It's the day to day stuff, getting up in the morning and just having a cup of tea, even just the little things. That's what's actually more engaging to a viewer than getting ready for a fight week every time. It's a dime a dozen. We see that a lot.
Shout out as well, to the MMA Creators podcast, right? Is that
my man?
Yeah. I've tuned into quite a few of them. I'm always a big person when it comes to like goals. So like your one that you did at the start of the year about setting goals and what your goals are for this. Fantastic. Like you were kind of, I love the dynamic. The one that stands out for me on that episode is kind of you saying that your goal was to hit, was it 100K by the end of the year on your thing?
Well, it wasn't originally. And then Will said, why not shoot for it? And I was like, you know what, you're right. And I always, when I first started, and the principles always remain the same. I always set a goal I never think I'm probably going to reach, because then I'm never disappointed. And more often than not, I don't get far away from it anyway. I think when I started, even before I'd even made my first video, I said I want to get 20,000 subscribers in a year's time. And I said, and everyone was like, that's crazy. Like, yeah, maybe a little bit, but I'm going to go for it anyway. And I had a lot of people at the time when I first started telling me it was a waste of time, and like I was doing it in my final year in my university, doing my degree, and everyone was saying, you got to focus on your degree. And I was like, I can do both. I can put in the effort and I can do both. And a lot of people saying it wasn't good for your CV, not good for a career path. I was like, I don't really care. I'm going to go for it anyway. And by the end of that year, I had about 13,000, which again, not 20,000, but that's still pretty damn good. And I was very proud of it. And the same thing for last year as well. I think I said I wanted 40K. And I ended on 33 or 30, 35, maybe 33, maybe 33. I'm not entirely sure. Something like that. But again, not far off. And I'm still immensely proud of the work I've done. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Speaking of your degree, training jiu-jitsu at NTU has obviously given you access to a great environment and skilled teammates. How's being part of that specific jiu-jitsu community shaped your approach to the sport? And what's one lesson or experience from training there that stuck with you the most?
Oh, great question. For me, my love for jiu-jitsu, maybe not initially, but why I kept going and why I still keep going is the community. It's the social. That's the side of things, because I think with something like YouTube, particularly when you're working by yourself, the one biggest drawback, at least it's for me, I know everyone is different, but I love social situations. I like talking to people. And obviously with YouTube, it's a very solitary game most of the time. You're working, by yourself, for yourself. So jiu-jitsu has always been, at least now, a massive outlet for me socially, because obviously most of my friends are working in 9 to 5, so I can't see them that often. But there's always people at jiu-jitsu. There's always people there to talk to, have a chat with, have a laugh with, for an evening round, and just get a few rounds of sparring in. But at university, obviously, it was a bit different. That was also a social outlet for me too, of course. But at that time, I think when I started, it was just the love of the sport. And I always love the analogy of jiu-jitsu being something like a jigsaw puzzle. I think it's a popular one, but I stand by it. There's a lot of it's all about putting the pieces together. And then when it all finally comes together and you see the bigger picture and everything clicks and you're like, I understand this sequence of moves now. And it's just it was almost like computer coding in a lot of ways. That's not something I enjoy, but there was a certain sort of cerebral element to it back when I did it at school of problem solving, which I loved. And jiu-jitsu is very much the same in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I love the sport so much. And it's weird because martial arts was never something I thought I'd get into, of course, until I fell in love with MMA. And I've tried other ones, like I tried Muay Thai recently, actually, and I couldn't really gel with it in the same way. I couldn't really tell you why, but jiu-jitsu, I'm just very attached. I love it so much, yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought of it, and I've always resonated it as human chess, like kind of set the traps.
Yeah, human chess, that's the term.
Step. Did you start, was that your first ever session, was when you were at NTU?
Yeah, that's when I started. It was frustrating, actually. Sorry.
I think you're going to answer what I was going to say, so yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was frustrating because I wanted to do it in first year of university, but because of COVID, that was basically out the window. And even in second year, there was a lot of roadblocks for that as well. So I started later than I would have liked. But yeah, that was when I first kicked it off. It was tough. I think anyone's first few sessions are tough. And I always say to people who are new people I see at the gym now, I like to because a lot of people are quite nervous or they're not willing to take the first step. I like to just reach out and just say hi to someone and take the front foot in that regard. And striking up conversations with those people. And one of the things I say quite often, or I find myself saying, is that, the first few sessions are always the hardest. And anyone who sticks around after that, maybe after a couple of weeks, they're going to be there for a while because they fall in love, they get the jiu-jitsu bug and lump. And that always just tends to happen because most people don't end up even getting a submission within the first 2 weeks unless they've got a really strong athletic background or knowledge of martial arts. It's just survival. And there's quite a humbling thing about that. Of course, everyone talks about dismantling the ego, which is almost, I think it's kind of an overused thing to an extent. I think it's just about understanding the world of martial arts in particular and realizing that you don't know how to fight. That's what you've got to come to terms with. Not that everyone thinks they do going in. I didn't. But there are a lot of people who are like that, who have this, misconception and they think that they can, handle themselves in a fight outside a club at 3 a.m. when it's not the case at all. And jiu-jitsu definitely brings you down to that level when you get submitted by a kid who's got like 20 kgs lighter than you. Like, that's just what happens. And then you realize, oh shit, I want to get better. It urges you on to do more and be better. And yeah, man, I could talk about it for hours. I love Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I can tell. Now, coming on to kind of your bread and butter, your YouTube channel, Leo Cooper MMA, is, as you were saying, gained a solid following. I think when I last looked, it was about 34.2K, which is incredible for YouTube. Like, let's not butter it. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what's been the most challenging aspect of creating content in such a competitive space? Because as you were saying, you kind of had this really successful period of putting out videos and they just boomed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke to you about this a while ago, off air, maybe a week ago. But I said that the hardest part for me in that journey was, again, I don't want to use the double-edged sword phrase too much, but I feel like I have to use it here because I had that early success straight away. My third video did 100,000 views, and then I went on a really good run, and I got monetized very quickly. I was like, man, this is easy. And then I went through about 5 to 6 months after finishing university and doubling down, putting twice as much effort into my content, doing everything. I went through about 5 to 6 months of a video not cracking 10,000 views. And it was the most humbling experience of my sort of creative journey. But I needed to go through it because it made me realize that I need to do better. I can't, it was lightning in a bottle for a time, and that style of content wasn't good enough to sustain an audience. And if I want to be better, I've got to do more. And whether that's research, writing, every aspect of the creative sort of journey. So definitely that. But I think another thing that's more probably prevalent now is I'm starting to realize how competitive this space is. I think when I started, it wasn't anywhere near as big. It was it blew up right as after a few months after I sort of started getting into the content side of things. And now, obviously, there's so many individuals creating MMA content, less so the style that I do. I think there's much more fewer sort of documentary style content creators. But I'm trying to just be the best. I'm trying to be, I'd like to back myself. It's not something I normally do. I wouldn't normally say, oh, I'm the best or anything like that. And I still don't think I am. But I like to think I'm up in that conversation as one of the best documentary style content creators within that MMA space. I think there's very few people who can write like me, who can storytell like me. And that's not something I would normally do. I don't even think it's a big-headed thing to say. I'm just proud of the work I've done and how much improvements I made. And as I said earlier, my old videos are terrible. I've only got to this level through just doing the work over and over and over. And I think another thing I'd say is the idea side of things. The idea for me has always been the most important thing in a video completely, because I wish I remembered who it was. Like a YouTube analyst I follow on Twitter, really insightful person. And it's funny because I can't remember the name, but there's a phrase they use that really stands out to me. It's that the execution of a video determines how well a video will perform, and the idea determines the ceiling. So the idea will put that bar up there, and then the execution shows you how far along that sort of line upwards you're going to get there. But the idea is what will limit you or unshackle you, essentially. And finding the golden one is the most important thing for me in any video. I'm always trying to make the golden video every time I'm editing or I'm writing. That's the mindset I want to have. Again, you don't always get it right, but working on it.
What do you like? What is that process? Because we did speak about a little bit about producing documentaries and that stuff, and it did make me think, like, what's the process going into deciding what the actual idea is for the video? How do you keep it fresh and in tune with kind of your style?
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good point, what you just said there. That's the hardest part, because I've flirted with different ideas of where I want to take my content, or a general rough format. And most of the time, I think the stuff I'm better at is the individual documentaries on individual fighters. But I also like doing the broad concept pieces, because they lean into the sort of theatrical style of my writing. And finding an idea that can fit that sort of mold is quite difficult. But in terms of my research, I tend to look in other niches. I actually got that advice from Mixed Martial Academic, because he did the iceberg videos, which, they're like, one of them's got like 3 million views, the other one's got like 1.5. It's crazy. And they're very good videos in their own right, but then they weren't ideas from the MMA niche. They were from, loads of other niches. And he was like, if you can find a format or a concept and bring it into the MMA world that's popular elsewhere, you'll have success. And I took that on board. And that's where I retitled it. It was originally an entire history of the UFC, I guess, which is a format that's done before, and I've seen it done. I was like, I know this will work if I did it. So I did a big hour-long project, and with that title and thumbnail packaging, and it's still getting views sort of on and off even now. I don't even know how long I've had that video out, but quite a while. I'm probably approaching like 10 months now. And, that's probably the best example I can think of, at least on my channel, of applying knowledge of another niche and bringing it into the MMA one. But a lot of times, again, that doesn't mean I don't search the MMA niche. I look at the people who I look up to, like Patrick Gavia. In fact, my Volkanovski video, I credited him in my description because of the video packaging. I took huge inspiration from him from that, and I love the format, and I feel like I had to. It was too good of an opportunity to miss. Obviously, I very much done my own creative work on it. It's very much my thumbnail and my title, but the inspiration came from his McGregor documentary and his Chimaev documentary he did in terms of the video packaging. So I do look within the MMA niche as well, for sure.
I wanted to try and wrap this up in a bit of a fun way. So I've put together some quick fires, and you've got to rank them. So there's going to be 3 things. You're going to rank them like third to first, yeah?
Third being worst?
Third being worst, first being the best,
cool.
Yeah?
Okay. All right.
Voice memos from me to you. Ooh. I didn't mean to haunt you.
I mean, in the order you said it. But
okay.
yeah. It's 100% voice memos. I mean, I barely even listen to the album. It's generic YouTube rap. It's crap. Which shows you the evolution of the artist, because that album is unlistenable, to be honest with you, to me. The second one, you can see the elements of probably more artist he is now on the production side of things, but still kind of stuck in that YouTube mud. And then I Didn't Mean to Haunt You is my favorite album of all time, so that was always going to be number 1.
Frank Lampard, John Terry, Eden Hazard.
Oh, it depends in what terms, or you're just not going to say.
I'm not going to say.
That to me. Okay. I'm going to go off Chelsea legacy, and for that, I feel like I have to say Hazard, Terry, Lampard. Top 2 are so interchangeable, though. Honestly, it's hard to say. If we're talking about legacy as a Chelsea legend, as much as all 3 of them are, for sure, that's the order, I think.
So Hazard at the bottom, Lampard at the top.
Yeah,
nice. Okay. PlayStation, Xbox, or PC?
Oof. It's weird because I've spent more hours on Xbox than ever on PlayStation, but PlayStation's have objectively got the better games, so I feel like I have to go Xbox, PlayStation, PC all day. I've been playing PC in terms of how I game, PC for the last 11 years. So once you go PC, you just don't look back. It's just too much of a good platform to ignore. Yeah, 100%.
And with modern PCs, you've got the best of both worlds, where you can get like the Game Pass and a lot of the
exactly.
PlayStation games.
You can play anything now. Yeah, even PlayStation now, as you said. Yeah, why not? It's a no-brainer for me.
So yeah, that's it. A deep dive into Leo Cooper MMA. Thank you for joining us. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
It was good.
That was great. Yeah, some questions caught me off guard. Very good. I knew they would. I was like, I'm ready. I was ready for the questions, and even then, you still surprised me. So, well done.
All of Leo's links will be below. Usually the way this works is you guys probably already know them, but we'll include them below. And thanks for your time, and we will see you in the next one.